Hello, everybody. My name is Professor Paul Hicks, and I want to welcome you to Philosophy. This is a course on an introduction to philosophy, where we're going to look at the Western tradition of philosophy over the last 2,500 years. Now, I know many of you may know what philosophy is, many of you may have no experience in it whatsoever, but this is going to give you an opportunity to see what the most intellectual people of the last 2,500 years have really thought. This is going to be the intellectual foundation of Western society, of systems like democracy, capitalism, what is right and what is wrong. So before we go ahead and get into exactly what philosophy is, let me go ahead and start out with just a little story here. I want you to suppose that you are an astronaut and your spaceship gets out of control and crashes into some sort of unknown planet. You regain consciousness and you find that you're not hurt so badly, but don't you have a couple questions? So, for example, wouldn't you want to know, where am I? How can I discover it? And what should I do? You look around and you see unfamiliar vegetation outside. There seems to be air to breathe. Sunlight seems a little paler than you remember it. It's a little colder. You turn to look at the sky, but then you stop. You're struck by a sudden feeling that if you don't look, you won't have to know that you are perhaps too far from Earth and that no return is possible. So long as you don't know it, you're free to believe what you wish. You experience, though, a foggy, pleasant, and somehow guilty kind of hope. You turn to your instruments, but they might be damaged. Now, you don't know how seriously, but you stop and you're struck by a sudden fear. How can I even trust these instruments? How can I be sure that they won't mislead me? How can I know whether they'll work the same way in this world as they did in a different world? So you're going to turn away from your instruments. But now you're going to begin to wonder why you have no desire to do anything. It seems so much safer just to wait for something to turn up somehow. It's better, you tell yourself, not to rock the spaceship, but far in the distance you see some sort of living creature approaching. You don't know whether they're human, but they walk on 2 feet. They, you decide, will tell you what to do. You are then never heard of again. Is this some sort of fantasy? Is this just a story? Would you ever act like an astronaut like that? Maybe not. But I believe this is the way that most people actually live their lives. See, most people spend their days struggling to evade 3 questions. The answers to which, though, underlie and are the real foundation of humans' every thoughts, feelings, and actions. Now, whether they live consciously aware of it or not really doesn't matter. But the 3 questions of where am I, how do I know it, and what should I do? So ask yourself that. Where am I? How do I know it, and what should I do? Because how have you gone to answer those questions in the past? Well, most people get their answers from their parents, from the religion that they were raised in, from the culture and political system that they were raised in. But how do you know that you actually have the right one? How do you know, for example, that the political system you live in is the best political system for people? How do you know that the religion that you were raised in was actually the best religion? Right? So who you are, where you are, and how you find yourself on this planet, the 3rd rock from a sun, in a solar system that is just part of a galaxy, which is many, 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 many galaxies out there in the entire universe. How do you feel about that? How can you interpret your experiences? Well, that's what we're going to do here in philosophy. So let's go ahead and just break down exactly what philosophy is. Now, if you want to know what the root of a word is and the meaning of the actual word of philosophy, you can look at the etymology of it. And the word philosophy actually comes from 2 different words. That is philo and sophia. These are ancient Greek words. Philo means to love, and sophia means wisdom. And so what the word philosophy actually means is to be the love of wisdom. But of course, my telling you the etymology of it doesn't really tell you anything about what philosophy actually is. So let's go ahead and break down philosophy a little bit further if we can. Typically, philosophers break down philosophy into 4 branches. That is metaphysics, epistemology, ethics, and logic. So let's go ahead and go through them, and we'll consider what each of these branches are and what type of questions will we try to answer under those branches of philosophy. So let's go ahead and start with metaphysics. Now, you see this word meta, and you see physics, right? So let's go ahead and see what this actually means. Meta means beyond, and physics is of the physical world. So what is actually beyond the physical world? When we're talking about metaphysics, one of the things that we're really focusing in on is what is the actual nature of reality itself. So for example, we're going to ask ourselves questions like, what kind of thing am I? Am I a spirit? Am I a soul? Am I just physical brain matter? What am I? Or how about this? Does God exist? Right? How can I come to know whether or not God exists or whether God doesn't exist? This is a rather important question because, once again, it underlies many of the actual beliefs that you actually have. So, for example, if you happen to believe in God, that's going to influence you on, say, who you vote for, who you're friends with, what your value system is, what you might be willing to do for a job, what you're not willing to do, how you're going to live your life, the family structure that you're going to have. All of this is going to come down to your belief in God. Now, of course, if you don't believe in God, you're probably going to have other beliefs which are founded upon your lack of belief in God. So whether you believe in God or you don't believe in God, the belief itself underpins so much of what you actually believe and so much of what your life is actually going to be. So the question that you should really ask yourself is, did I get it right? Right? And how do I know? So other questions in philosophy of metaphysics that we might talk about are going to be, say, the nature of time. Does time actually exist? Can you time travel? What does time actually mean? Another question will be personal identity. What makes me me? What makes me the same person today that I was a week ago? All right, what am I? Are we immortal? What happens after we die? Should I be afraid of death? These are all questions that you're going to ask in metaphysics. What is the nature of reality? Is there a physical world? How do I know it? How do I know that my instrument, that is my mind, that is experiencing the world, how do I know that I can trust it? How do I know that I can trust my senses when they tell me that there's, say, a computer and a camera in front of me right now? How do I know? These are all questions in metaphysics trying to understand the nature of reality. Okay, let's go ahead and move now to another branch of philosophy called epistemology. Let me ask you this question. How do you know what you know? Now, I know that sounds maybe like a little stoner thought at first, but let's just break this down just a bit. What is the difference between knowing a certain proposition is true versus just believing a certain proposition is true? If I was to say, for example, I believe that God exists, but I might be wrong, did I contradict myself? No, because isn't it possible for me to believe in it that a certain proposition is true, even recognizing I might actually be wrong? One might say that that's actually the most rational position to take, is to always know that you might be wrong. We don't want to assume that we are infallible. Now compare the statement, I believe God exists, but I might be wrong, to the following statement. I know God exists, but I might be wrong. What are we talking about here? How do I know if I actually believe I might be wrong? What is the difference here between saying I know God exists versus believing that I believe God exists? See, with knowledge, there seems to be a little more force underneath it. There needs to be more justification for it. Well, what is the proper amount of justification in order to know something versus just believing it? So what is the nature of knowledge? This is what we study in epistemology. Questions like, where do our ideas come from? Are we born with them? Are ideas innate within us? Do we have to experience the world in order to get some sort of ideas? What is an idea and what is knowledge? Those are the types of questions that we're going to consider in the epistemology section of this course. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the third branch of philosophy, and that is ethics. Now, under ethics, we're going to consider ourselves what is right and what is wrong. But there's also another way of looking at ethics, and that is, what is the best way for human beings to live? What type of life should I actually live? Questions like, what is justice? Does justice exist? Is there actually an answer to whether statements are right or wrong, or are they just mere opinions? Now, be very careful about this, because if you say that all ethics is just mere opinions, then it might be my mere opinion to go out and do really harmful things. What's to stop us from doing harmful things if there is in fact no truth about ethics? Right? Can I actually say murder is wrong? So let's take the statement, murder is wrong. What makes it wrong? Why is murder wrong? I think we can agree that murder is in fact wrong, but notice what you're saying, if murder is in fact wrong. That means it's not a matter of mere opinion, but it's a matter of fact itself. What is it to say that murder is in fact wrong? How do we come to know what is right and what is wrong? How should we interact with other people? How should we interact with non-human animals? What is the best way for me to live my life? What is the purpose of life? Am I supposed to seek money? Am I supposed to seek happiness? What's going to give me the quality of life that we're actually all seeking? So those are going to be questions in ethics that we will actually consider later on. All right, now the last branch of philosophy is logic. So in logic, one of the things that we're going to do here is, well, logic is the study of arguments. Okay, what is an argument? An argument, the textbook definition of it is a set of statements such that one statement is supported by the others. But here's essentially what we're saying. This is what I believe, and here is why I believe it. If you're a rational person, you should believe it too. Right? I'm giving you reasons to believe whatever it is I happen to believe. I'm using quality reasoning to believe whatever it is that I happen to believe. This is what we're going to study in logic. How do I know that certain statements derive from other statements? If I know, say, a certain premise is true, can I conclude anything from that? This is what we're going to study in logic. And you're going to need to study a little bit of logic in order to understand this course and to get the most out of this actual course. And so that's going to be done. All right. So those are the four branches of philosophy. And we're going to touch on all areas of philosophy in this course. So I want to give you another little allegory. This is from Plato. It's called the allegory of the cave. I want you to imagine that you were chained at the bottom of a cave and you're looking directly forward to you at a wall. Now you can't move your head back and you can't turn around in any sort of way. You've been chained this way and you've been chained this way since birth. You don't know about anything behind you because all you've ever seen is directly what's in front of you. Now behind you there happens to be a wall, and behind that wall there happens to be like little puppeteers with little figurines. Behind them is a light source, a fire. Now what's going to happen? You're going to have this light source, which is going to be blocked by these little figurines, which is then going to project what onto the wall in front of you? Shadows. So you're going to be looking at shadows. Now since you have been raised only thinking that what's in front of you is all that exists, what you believe to actually exist are really mere shadows. Now let's say for a moment that you happen to break free of your chains for the very first time. Now you happen to look behind you and you see the fire for the first time. You see the puppets for the first time. And you start to put it all together and you say, hey, wait a second here. What I thought was absolutely true my entire life is really just a mere shadow of what is actually true. That what is actually true is that the light is being blocked by these little figurines, and it is that light being blocked which projects a shadow onto the wall. And so when I thought that the shadow was the real true nature of reality, I in fact have been wrong because I now experience something new. I have now discovered that I've in fact been wrong. Okay, now let's say you happen to look up and you see the exit of the cave itself. Now you walk out of the cave. And for the first time, instead of just seeing, say, like a little figurine of a dog or a little figurine of a giraffe or what have you, you see an actual dog for the very first time. Okay, now you're going to be completely blown away by this, right? You're having one hell of a day here. Now you're thinking, whoa, wait a second. What I originally thought was the true nature of reality was actually nothing but a shadow. And then I learned something, and I thought what the true nature of reality was these figurines, which was projecting the shadow. But now I have come out of the cave, and I see that those figurines are just mere representations of what's actually real. Okay, so you're having one hell of a day here, right? So just think about this. Could you go back to the bottom of the cave, chain yourself up, and look at shadows for the rest of your life? Is that possible? Would you ever do such a thing? And if you did go back to the bottom of the cave, and you talk to your friends down there, do you think you could ever explain to them the true nature of reality? Or is that something that they're going to have to experience for themselves? Not just that, but what would they say to you? And when you went down and said, look, these shadows are not real, what's actually real is something else, right? What would they say? They would say you're delusional. They would say you're being irrational, right? They would not believe you, and that they would believe there is something wrong with you. See, here's the thing. This is exactly what philosophy does. For those who are inexperienced in philosophy, they are still sitting at the bottom of that cave. What my job is to do is to go down to the bottom of the cave, and I want to help you out. I want to pull you out from the bottom of the cave and bring you out of the cave. Now, you may look at me and think, I'm not at the bottom of any sort of cave. How do you know? Right? Going back to the whole astronaut thing, how do you know where you are? How do you know what you don't know? How do you know any of this? All right? Okay. So, there's a good quote by the philosopher Bertrand Russell that is from The Value of Philosophy. And he says this. He says, quote, "The value of philosophy is, in fact, to be sought largely in its very uncertainty. The man who has no tincture of philosophy goes through life imprisoned into prejudices derived from common sense, from the habitual beliefs of his age or his nation, and from convictions which have grown up in his mind without the cooperation or consent of his deliberate reason. To such a man, the world tends to become definite, finite, and obvious. Common objects rouse no questions, and unfamiliar possibilities are contemptuously rejected." What do we think of that quote? Is that you? Is that me? I hope not. How do you know? You know what you know. Why are you so set in what your actual beliefs are? Do you assume that you're infallible? Now, it would seem that there's certain beliefs that I have that are probably wrong. I accept that as a fact. Do you accept that as a fact? That certain things you believe to be absolutely true, you are in fact wrong about? Well, in philosophy, what we're going to do is to try to uncover what those are. See, we all believe things which are true, and we all believe things which are false. The problem is we don't know which one is which. See, if I knew which beliefs of mine were false, then I don't really believe it, do I? So this is what philosophy does. We're going to try to uncover and help you unlearn everything your culture has taught you and try to get to the truth. What is the true nature of reality? How do I know what I actually know? What is the best way for me to live my life, and what is right and wrong? And how can I actually derive the truth conclusions from given premises. This is exactly what philosophy is. So I want to welcome you to philosophy. Thank you for taking this course, and enjoy the journey that you're about to embark on. All right, I'll talk to you next time. Have a good day.